Welcome to Life Stories, where every journey is a testament to resilience, hope, and the power of transformation. Today's story follows Clara, a woman whose life seemed to fall apart after betrayal, infertility, and a broken marriage. But what seemed like the end turned out to be just the beginning. Clara's journey is one of rediscovery, self-empowerment, and ultimately, love. Join us as we explore how she rebuilt her life from the ashes of her past and found strength in the most unexpected places. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel to start today's story. My name is Clara Davis, and for 7 years, I was married to Michael Thompson. Our relationship had started with great promise. We met at university, in a literature club. We were both dreamers, our hearts full of ambitions and ideas, imagining a life where we would travel the world, create meaningful work, and build a family together. It felt like a story that could last a lifetime. But as time passed, the fairy tale began to unravel. We had always talked about having children, but after we got married, that dream began to slip further and further away from us. It started small, a month here and there with no luck. But after years of trying and nothing to show for it, we both knew something was wrong. We began fertility treatments 3 years ago, and it felt like a never-ending cycle of tests, appointments, and hope that was always dashed. The doctors couldn't pinpoint exactly what was going on. They said we had unexplained infertility, a term that never failed to make my stomach churn. I learned to smile through the frustration, pretending I wasn't as devastated as I was. The pain of wanting something so badly and not being able to have it takes its toll. Michael's family, the Thompsons, were a constant source of pressure. They were a family of tradition, influence, and expectation. Michael's mother, Patricia, had always been the perfect hostess. She was a woman of high society, with a sharp tongue and a sharp gaze that could cut through anyone. Her presence filled a room in a way that made you feel small, insignificant, if you weren't a part of her world. Then there was his sister, Allison, strong-willed, ambitious, and always making sure everyone knew she had it all together. She had the perfect career, the perfect family, and the perfect life. And me? I was just Clara, a children's book editor at a small publishing house in the city. My job wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful to me. But to them, it was just something to look down upon. I remember the sharp words Patricia would throw my way during family gatherings, disguised as concerned questions. "So, Clara, how's your little publishing company? Still working on editing children's books?" Her words always carried a weight of mockery. "How is your career progressing, dear? Still managing to make ends meet?" I had become used to the barbs, but they still stung. They never accepted me, never saw me as part of their world. I wasn't from the right background. My father was a high school English teacher, and my mother had passed away when I was young. I was raised by my grandmother Edith, a woman who had always given me love and care, but who hadn't been wealthy or influential. I had always known my life wasn't like theirs, but it hurt every time they reminded me. I tried to focus on Michael, on our love, on what we had, but even Michael, my husband, started to drift. At first, he'd comfort me when his family hurt my feelings, but gradually, he started to take their side more often. The pressure from his mother and sister intensified as the years went on, especially when they found out we were trying fertility treatments. The Thompson family has always produced strong sons. Patricia would say, "It's a shame that your bloodline won't continue." She'd say it as if she was stating a fact, something that couldn't be avoided. And she'd look at me as though I was the one responsible for the failure. But it wasn't my fault. That day, on my birthday, I had no idea what was coming. Michael handed me a small gift box before he rushed off to work. His voice soft as he kissed me on the cheek and promised we would celebrate later. "Happy birthday, Clara. Let's celebrate tonight, I promise." I smiled, but something inside me felt off. It had been years since we'd truly celebrated anything together, and the feeling of emptiness lingered as I sat down to work on a manuscript. Later that day, the phone rang. It was Patricia. "Happy birthday, Clara," she said with a tone that was surprisingly warm, almost sweet. I wanted to invite you to a special dinner tonight. Let's meet at the Chateau Bloom at 7. It's a special occasion. After all, the Chateau Bloom, one of the most exclusive French restaurants in the city. I was stunned. Patricia had never before made such an effort to celebrate my birthday. Was this a change of heart? Why was she suddenly being so generous? A small flicker of hope rose in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, things were going to change. When I spoke to Michael, his voice seemed tense. I know about the dinner. Clara, Mother invited you. I'll join you later. Something in his tone felt off. I tried to shake the feeling of unease. Maybe he was just busy. Maybe it was nothing. I chose a black cocktail dress. The one that made me feel a little confident. I put my hair up, added a simple diamond necklace, and stared at my reflection. Maybe this was the beginning of something new. Something that would finally make things right. At Chateau Bloom, I was greeted by a polite manager who led me to a private room. When I stepped inside, I was shocked to find the room empty, save for a large round table covered in a pristine white cloth. With 7 champagne glasses waiting to be filled, there was no one there. Confused, I asked the manager, "Has everyone not arrived yet?" He looked at me, surprised. "The Thompsons have already arrived. Please wait a moment." As I waited, my gaze fell on a small envelope with my name written on it in elegant handwriting. My heart skipped a beat. Inside the envelope were 2 documents, divorce papers and a note in Michael's handwriting. "Happy birthday, Clara. The infertile defect must go. Richard can have a real family." The world stopped. My hands trembled as I looked at the papers. Michael's signature already on them. The note from Michael was clear. "I want to leave an heir for the Thompson family. It's no longer possible with you. I've already moved into another apartment. Goodbye." Tears streamed down my face. My 7-year marriage, gone. And in the most cruel, heartless way. It was as if my whole world had shattered in that moment. But amid the heartache, something else stirred within me, a quiet anger. How dare they? How dare they use my birthday to rip my life apart? How could Michael betray me like this? But the anger wasn't just for the betrayal. It was also for the years of pressure, the emotional toll, and the lies that had built up over time. I had always felt like I wasn't enough. And now, they had confirmed it. I sat there in the dim light of that private room, my heart aching and my mind racing. The sounds of the busy restaurant seemed distant, as if muffled by the heavy weight of the papers in my hands. I couldn't even bring myself to look at the documents for too long. Not because I didn't want to face the reality of the situation, but because I was afraid of what I might feel if I acknowledged it too much. The betrayal was too raw, too painful, and yet, in the midst of this storm of emotions, something within me began to shift. There was a strange sense of liberation that slowly took root, like a seed planted in the darkest soil, pushing its way upward toward the light. This wasn't the end of my story. I realized, it was simply a new beginning. The waiter eventually came, delivering my champagne and dinner as ordered. The clinking of the glasses and the soft bubbling of the champagne seemed to ground me. I took a sip, allowing the delicate bubbles to lift me out of the fog. If only for a moment. It was strange, how something so simple, so small, could feel like a victory in the face of all that had just shattered in my life. I didn't leave the restaurant right away. I couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I took a deep breath and carefully tucked the divorce papers back into the envelope. I didn't want to hold on to them, but I didn't know what else to do. The thought of going back to the life I once had, of living in the same world as Michael and his family, felt unbearable. I had to move forward. And in some twisted way, the night had been a catalyst for something much more profound than just the pain I had expected. Over the next few weeks, I found myself caught in a whirlwind of decisions. I was no longer Mrs. Clara Thompson, tied to the expectations of a family that never truly accepted me. Instead, I was just Clara, me, with no obligations to anyone other than myself. But it wasn't the emptiness I thought I would feel. Instead, I found myself leaning into my own dreams, the ones I had pushed aside for so long. buried under layers of disappointment and sacrifice. One thing became clear to me. I had always loved books. Since I was a child, they had been my escape, my sanctuary, and my joy. I had always dreamed of opening my own bookstore, a place where I could surround myself with stories that could inspire others, especially children. But I never allowed myself to take that leap. There had always been a reason not to, a job I needed to keep, a marriage I needed to uphold, expectations I had to meet. Now, I was free. I took the money I inherited from my grandmother, $8 million. A sum that felt both surreal and empowering, and used a portion of it to open a small bookstore in the Beacon Hill district of Boston. I named it Edith's Bookshelf, after my grandmother, who had passed away years before but had always been my guiding light. I wanted to honor her memory, her quiet strength, and the way she had always encouraged me to chase my own dreams, even when I didn't believe I was worthy of them. The bookstore became a sanctuary for me. It wasn't just a business, it was a place of healing. Every morning, I would walk through the door, breathe in the scent of old paper and fresh ink, and know that I was building something that mattered, something that was truly mine. The store had a reading corner for children, a cozy little space where parents and kids could curl up with books. And it wasn't long before the local community began to take notice. I reached out to authors I knew from my years in the publishing world. And soon, local authors were coming in for reading sessions. The bookstore transformed into a hub for children's literature, a place where people came to celebrate stories and imagination. I felt a sense of purpose I had never experienced before. Every day, I was surrounded by books and children, watching their faces light up as they discovered new stories. It was simple, yes, but it was profound. I was finally doing something that felt like me, something that felt right. As the weeks went by, the pain of the past began to fade. It didn't vanish completely, it never does. But I began to realize that I didn't need to hold on to the anger, the hurt, or the disappointment anymore. Michael and his family had tried to define me, to make me feel small and unworthy. But I was not their version of me. I was Clara, and I was enough. In those quiet moments at the bookstore, surrounded by the soft rustle of pages turning and the sound of children's laughter, I knew I was building something far greater than I had ever imagined. My past had shaped me, yes, but it didn't define me. I was free, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. Months passed, and my life took shape in ways I never could have imagined. The bookstore, Edith's Bookshelf, was becoming more than just a place of work. It was becoming a part of me. It was a reflection of my journey, my rebirth, and a symbol of my resilience. There were still moments when the shadows of my past crept into my thoughts. But with every book I shelved, every child I saw engrossed in a story, I felt a step further from the pain I had once endured. It wasn't just the bookstore that was changing me. In those months, I found new connections, real ones, the kind that didn't come with hidden expectations or cruel judgments. I met people who saw me for who I was, not who I was supposed to be. Among them was Michael Adams, a gentle, middle-aged cardiac surgeon who had started visiting the bookstore regularly. He came searching for books for his nephew, a bright young boy with a love for science. Over time, our conversations began to extend beyond the shelves and into more personal territory. We talked about books, life, and, slowly, our own experiences. Michael was different. He listened with empathy, his voice never judgmental, always kind. As he got to know me, I shared my story, how I had been betrayed by my ex-husband and his family, how I had struggled with infertility, how my dreams had been crushed under the weight of their expectations. Michael never flinched. He didn't offer empty words of comfort or advice, he simply listened. With understanding, without rushing to fix anything. It was the first time I had felt truly heard in years. One evening, as we sat in the bookstore after hours, Michael shared his own struggles. He spoke about his career, the pressures of being a successful surgeon, and the loneliness he sometimes felt. Despite being surrounded by people, He told me that he had always wanted to write a medical book but didn't know how to convey complex medical concepts to a general audience. His passion for helping others was evident, but he struggled with the idea of making his work accessible. I think it's a valuable project, I told him, my eyes lighting up. I have editing experience, and I might be able to help you with that. The idea excited me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. It was a chance to combine my love for literature with my desire to make a difference. Our professional relationship blossomed into a deeper, more meaningful connection, and before long, we were spending more time together, both in and out of the bookstore. Over time, as our relationship grew, Michael supported me through moments of doubt and fear. He encouraged me to keep moving forward, to embrace the life I had built, and to continue chasing my dreams. And slowly, I began to open up to him, not just about my past, but about the possibilities of a future that I had never allowed myself to imagine before. One afternoon, as we were walking through the streets of Boston, Michael asked me a question that I wasn't sure I was ready to answer. "Clara," he said softly, "have you ever thought about starting a family again?" The question hit me like a wave, one I had not anticipated. For so long, I had believed that my chance at motherhood had been taken from me. But in that moment, with Michael by my side, I realized something important. Family doesn't have to be born of blood. It doesn't have to be defined by the expectations of others. It can be created in many ways. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to take a step toward creating a new family of my own. Several months later, Michael and I made the decision to adopt. It wasn't a choice we made lightly. It was a decision that came after much conversation, introspection, and understanding of what we truly wanted. We reached out to an adoption agency, and within a few months, we were introduced to two beautiful twin girls, Emma and Sophia. They were 6 years old, and their story was heartbreaking. They had been through so much already, and though they were wary at first, their gentle hearts began to open as we showed them love and care. Adoption wasn't just about us giving them a home. It was about creating a bond of trust and unconditional love. It was about healing all of us, Michael, me, and the girls, in ways we hadn't even known we needed. I had spent years chasing a dream of a family that never materialized the way I had imagined. But now, I was starting to realize that the family I had always wanted was something I could build. Piece by piece, with love and patience. The journey wasn't easy. There were moments of uncertainty, of fear that I wasn't enough. But with Michael by my side, and the girls in our lives, I began to see that the family I had once thought would never be mine was already coming together in the most beautiful way. We were learning from each other, growing together, and most importantly, we were healing together. One day, as we were driving to a special place, a place that held memories I had long buried, I turned to Michael and the girls and said, "This is where it all began for me." We arrived at the Chateau Bloom, the same restaurant where my world had once come crashing down. I looked at the building, but this time, it didn't have the same power over me. I wasn't trapped in the past anymore. I had moved on, and as we entered the restaurant, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. Inside, the manager greeted us warmly, and I saw two familiar faces sitting at a table in the back. It was Patricia and Michael's brother, Dylan. The years had been unkind to them, their once perfect lives now marred by struggle. As our eyes met, there was no anger, no bitterness, just a quiet acknowledgement of how far I had come. I nodded slightly, then turned away, focusing on the family I had built. Michael placed his hand on my shoulder, and the girls giggled, absorbed in the dessert menu. "This is where I thought it ended," I whispered to Michael, but in reality, it was only the beginning. And in that moment, as I looked around at the people who truly loved me, I knew that the future I had once feared was now a future filled with love, hope, and endless possibilities. As I sat there, surrounded by my new family, Michael, Emma, and Sophia, I realized how far I had come. The woman who once felt abandoned, insignificant, and alone had found strength in her own resilience. The pain of the past had shaped me, yes, but it did not define me. I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, turning every setback into an opportunity for growth, and finding love in places I had never expected. The world was no longer a place of closed doors and broken dreams. It was full of possibilities, of new beginnings. The lessons I had learned, about love, forgiveness, and the power of self-discovery, had not only transformed my life but had given me the courage to start fresh. To build something beautiful from the ashes of my old life. As we sat together at the table, laughing and enjoying each other's company, I knew that this was where I was meant to be. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to face whatever came next. I had built a family of my own, one that was bound not by blood, but by love, trust, and the shared experiences that made us stronger. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that life is full of twists and turns. Some painful, some joyful, but all necessary for our growth. So, whatever your journey may be, remember that even when it feels like the end, it's often just the beginning. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to stay updated with more life stories. Your story, just like mine, is waiting to be written.